begin in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Fragments of Silicon, now available in both irregular and regular varieties.
Welcome to a brand new season of Fragments of Silicon, Season 9. Granted, it's less noteworthy considering that we've been doing episodes all week, but that's just kind of how our production goes. This is just the first main or alpha episode, as we call them, the one that has the full format going for it. So it's considered to be like the proper episode of a week. Anyway, I'm your host, Adam, and joining me as always is the regular crew. Ogre.
I got nothing smart to say.
Twilight.
Hello.
Petty Fan.
Anybody mind drawing out my sinuses?
No. And Golix.
Not having anything smart to say has never stopped me from saying stuff.
Anyway,
Damn straight.
I just got a note from Mac. He says he has fell ill and will not be joining us this week. So,
well,
we'll try again next week, I guess, if he's feeling up to it. Anyway, forgive us if we seem a bit off the mark. Going away for a few weeks always kind of introduces a bit of ring rust that we got to shake off. Also, a couple of our, a couple of the crew here have also fallen ill. So, bear with us on our timing and such. Anyway, so I suppose we should get to the news. Petty Fan, why don't you go first since you have illness to deal with?
Yeah, like I mentioned, I've had a head cold for the past couple days, so hopefully it passes soon. Aside from that, on the break, I had that upper endoscopy done. They didn't really find anything other than some inflammation in my esophagus that they're waiting on pathology results to see what that is. So that's going to be fun. Yeah. Aside from that, not a whole lot's been really happening.
Okay. Golix, you're up.
I'm also not exactly tip-top. I have a bit of a headache today for I don't know what reason. My sister is unexpectedly visiting for a few days, so that's some combination of nice and a pain. You know how it is. Other than that, I did not have as much time to catch up on video games over the break as I was hoping to, because you know how it always is, stuff needed to be done around the house or whatever, but I did have fun playing the games that we reviewed last week, or at least most of them, and I'm going to try to start the ones for this week soon.
I think you'll like one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's like also, we only got like one 4-coder, and the other one was a 2-coder.
Mm-hmm. Which always helps because I have a hard enough time finding time.
Anyway,
making time.
Anything else?
No, that's pretty much it.
All right, Ogre, you're up.
Let's see. During the break was my birthday, so I'm 32 years old now. To do. Let's see. It was pretty good. Kind of could have gone to a better place for dinner, but hindsight and all that. I got Fire Emblem Echoes, which I've been playing through because that Nintendo discount and whatnot. Let's see. Sunday, I helped Naka and Barry move out of their apartment into their new house, which rendered most of my body unable to move after so long.
That
Because
brings back memories.
turns out moving a couch is kind of a bitch.
Fuck it, leave it. You can buy another one.
No, my general idea was that just throw it over the edge. If it survives, it was meant to be.
If it's repairable, we can put it in the truck.
Yeah.
But yeah, they should be moved in now. Unfortunately, in a quite ironic sense, I told them to try to get, their internet provider to know beforehand, but they didn't, so now they're stuck with that internet for the time being.
So how's Naka uploading videos?
He is not.
He probably has a stockpile waiting to be
He had a
published on.
stockpile.
Yeah.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, he said so earlier. He had a stockpile. Now they're kind of stuck with whatever they got, so probably going to be a bit before videos resume.
Something like Monday he's getting internet or something like that.
That is what I assume so. Also, I am looking into that power line network adapter. I did ask Petty, the wiring should be fine in my house, so.
Alright. So yeah, you got the options I sent you, right?
Yeah. I'm assuming I have to buy Ethernet cables for them too.
The first one I sent you, the box said it came with them. I don't know about the second one.
The one with the extra plugs in it?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Saves that. Yeah, I'll get to ordering that soon, because it turns out, apparently, I don't know, wireless cards just don't want to seem to work properly for me, so fuck it, we'll just do that.
Yeah, such is life.
Well, you live and learn. I guess that means I'll have to take that off the board, but whatever. Other than that, that's pretty much it for my news, so...
Twilight, it's your go.
Well, during the past 2 weeks, we had a lot of rain, which brought up some concerns with flooding. But luckily that didn't happen, though some areas did get flooded. Anyway, I finally got my car paid off, which I bought back in 2013. Yeah, I'm excited about that.
And that's the time when the engine falls apart.
Hopefully not. It's actually been a pretty reliable car so far, with the exception of that one time I had an accident.
Mm-hmm.
Yikes.
And let's see, anything else. During the break, I played and beat Metro 2033, which I enjoyed more than I expected to. And also tried out Dragon's Dogma. It was better than I expected as well. And of course, played the games that we had for the 2 weeks, and I actually really enjoyed the Fall 2. And that's about it for me.
All right, I guess it's my go. Let's see. Well, during the break, we had a kind of a surprise visit from some family members from out of town. That went better than I was expecting it, because
I'm assuming you had to go to the dentist afterward for all the grading.
not as much as I thought, but let's just say I'm glad that my life is once again free of racist ranting.
Sounds delightful.
Yeah, I'm like, family. You can't pick them. Like, politics. But aside from that, it was good seeing them again. and they only stayed for a weekend. It was over President's Day, and they had a relaxing time, especially since their home life is pretty bad. Let's just say.
Mm,
I can't get into any details on the show, but let's just say it. There is a bad situation there, and it's been that way for 5, 6 years now, and I have no idea if it's ever going to change, or at least anytime in the immediate future. But I'm just like there's a reason why nobody else wants to go down there and visit them. Let's just say.
I could watch.
Yeah, like aside from that, yeah, it's like recent tidings has been about getting the show back in order, uh, playing the games, reviewing them. In case you missed it, we kind of did a review blitz on Sunday, since what happens during the break is, we keep getting games to review, yet, we don't have a production time to review them, so they start stacking up. So sometimes we have to double up in order to kind of alleviate the flow.
well, in this case, it was more quadruple up.
Yeah, well, we usually do 2 reviews a week, so this time it was 4. Thankfully, like half the games were really short and small, so we could do that. I mean, right now we're all back to normal now, though. So, aside from that, Mac has a bit of an update on his illness. Apparently, he's got he I'm not sure if it's con plague, but he says his friend Nathan got him sick during his last visits. So,
Oh boy.
yeah. So, hopefully he feels better next week. Until then, also of note, we will be bringing in a special correspondent for our topic of discussion later on in the show. He's been in a lot of our post-show discussions, but I think this will be the first time he debuts on air for this program.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be having our political correspondent for Kevin joining us, because it's going to be a very political topic. Just fair warning in advance. It's going to get very political, maybe more than a little heated. Not at each other, just kind of at the situation, because we are going to be talking about gun violence in the video games media again, because it's that time.
Yeah, that time that we
Mhm.
never want to see has happened yet again.
Yeah, I'm like, and the usual scapegoating is happening, so thus we have to dance the dance we have to do. But before that, thankfully, we do have happier tidings with our interview this week. Joining us this week is John Warner of Over the Moon Games.
What up?
So, how are you doing tonight?
Very well. I'm feeling good, man. I'm glad to be here.
Indeed. It has been a very long time since we last had you on the program.
Yes.
Not just a lifetime ago for you, but just for us. I was looking back on how long ago that was. Our original crew. I don't know if we even had theme music back then.
Well, if we did, Keith was playing it on his guitar.
Yeah, it's like it was it was a long time ago. Anyway, but the reason that it's been such a long gap is because, well, the Fall 2 took a long time to make.
Indeed.
Indeed. Right, for those who might not be familiar with the Fall series, what exactly is this?
Well, The Fall is a mix of sort of point-and-click adventure with a little bit of action and an interesting art style, I suppose. Basically, in it, you play as the artificial intelligence on board an armored combat suit, not unlike Cortana in Halo, for example. The twist, of course, is that the guy inside the suit is unconscious. He's been injured, and it's your job to take control of the suit and try and drag him towards help That was the contents of the first game, and the Fall Part 2 picks up basically where the Fall leaves off, and the story, well, the whole arc over the trilogy, I suppose, is sort of about this AI developing and expanding her consciousness and becoming more sentient, I suppose.
Because around the end of the first game, she has kind of a breakdown when she realizes she's done some things that she probably shouldn't have done. So I think at the end of that one, she's semi-decommissioned, and this one starts with her trying to make herself undecommissioned.
Yeah, basically coming back online. Yeah, she had a. I guess you could call it like a. I mean, I guess I'll just spoil the game. If you haven't played the Fall Part 1, I'm just going to spoil it. In fact, we'll probably end up spoiling a lot of the Fall Part 2, I would imagine.
Well, I was gonna say the Fall Part 2 does have basically a recap thing when you start it up. So.
Yep.
Yeah. So, spoiler warnings if you're listening to the recorded version. Skip ahead since we're recording live. I cannot tell you the timestamps. It's just
I'll try and add them in post, but I don't know if they'll show up on TalkShoe.
fair enough, but we roll with what we got. So
I'll just try and preface any spoilers with skip ahead 20 seconds or something like that, maybe.
Okay.
But it's honestly the game's been out for years, so
Yeah.
I mean, we'll probably if they've even seen any marketing material for the Fall Part 2, it even kind of contains spoilers in it to some extent. So
anyway, consider yourselves thoroughly warned. Anyway, so the big secret of the Fall Part 1 is Jacobs is not in the suit.
right, yeah, Joseph's, that's right.
Joseph, sorry. Yeah. And that causes Arid to basically go haywire.
Yeah, more or less. She's kind of been building on it in the whole part. I mean, Part 1 is sort of about a character has a very, very rigid, narrow relationship to her own sense of purpose and direction, as a lot of people do. And in order to meet her primary goal, which is to save the pilot, Arid begins finding little loopholes in her rules and finding ways to circumvent them, without sort of maybe being entirely conscious of it for some of it. And all of these sort of contradictions start compounding on themselves until, finally, when she realizes that the guy that she's supposed to save wasn't even in the suit, everything that she's done sort of just outlines how massively faulty she's been acting. And so therefore her I mean, you could say it, fundamental orienting principles are kind of seen by her as a sort of sham. So she has a sort of psychological collapse, basically, and that's where we leave her at the end of Part 1.
Mm-hmm. Right. So before we delve deeper into the Fall Part 2, a question I have about the series in general is, when you set out to make this, did you have the entire trilogy sketched out, or has it been an evolving process?
It kind of half and half. We've had some ideas about where we want to take the trilogy, but generally it's been evolving. And certainly the Fall Part 2, that's part of the reason it's taken so bloody long, is it went through a lot of changes as we sort of explored and tried to find what we were trying to articulate. That took a while. That was a long process.
So I guess the question is, what changed? What was the biggest challenges in expanding the sequel, and what stayed relatively constant?
Yeah, that's tricky to say. I mean, we changed basically everything. A lot of the puzzles in Part 2, I mean, I don't know how they appeal or how they occur to most people, but in my opinion, they're a lot more consciously designed. The context is so. For example, in Part 1, it starts with kind of a bit of an open period where, you explore around, you find a little wrench, you use the wrench to detach a robotic arm, and you go find a key card. And I mean, I guess if you want to psychoanalyze that, you can say that you're using a body part, some robot, and maybe that's something about purpose. But I think that would be ridiculous to psychoanalyze that. I think that basically a lot of the puzzles are sort of they're kind of arbitrary and meaninglessly put in, and it doesn't the game, it doesn't say like that. Like a lot of we do have set pieces in the fall part 1, but in part 2 our puzzles are designed around set pieces and themes, I guess. And the big design challenge was trying to find interesting set pieces for each of the areas that fit together in a cohesive way, such that the story really resonated with the gameplay. That was a really big challenge, and I think one that I hope we pulled off. But that really depends, of course, on how people feel about it, I guess.
Well, I mean, what has the reaction been from like the community to part 2?
It's hard to say. I would say mixed, but good. Like, we've had a few people that love it. We've had a few reviews that were extraordinarily positive. We had some negative reviews as well, including some of the people that really supported the game the first time around. Like Patrick Klepek was really disappointed by it, which is...
I saw that.
Yeah, it's too bad. We were sad when we saw that, but... I don't know. It's hard to say. When you make something, you try and connect with people, and we seem to have connected with a lot of people and not connected with a lot of other people. And I've certainly got some thoughts about that. But I'm very proud of the project, and regardless of whether or not it's connected with who. I know how I feel about it, and I'm very proud of some of the stuff that we tried. So I'll actually probably be composing a full post-mortem in maybe a month or so or something like that. And I'm gonna go into detail in terms of like everything that we were attempting and why the project took so long and certain mistakes that we made and all this kind of stuff. So it's kind of, sorry for the long-winded answer, but it's sort of, I'm not sure how I feel about it. It's rattling around in my brain is the answer.
Maybe that just needs some time to gestate.
Yeah, I think so, probably.
I mean, the game is like only a few weeks old at this point.
Yeah, big time.
And yeah, like we did our own review on Sunday, and we thought there were a lot of high points, but there were parts that we thought weren't as strong. Like, I'll admit that the Metroidvania segments felt very bland, very just there to be the fill points in between the character segments.
Yeah, the parts where she's interfacing with the different other characters in the robot bodies are really good, although the search function is a little bit clunky sometimes, but especially given the awkward placing of like the jump button and some stuff and that can't be remapped, I found that the network Metroidvania stuff was kind of awkward.
Hey, fair enough, man.
Not saying it's necessarily bad, but it's pretty, forgettable, unfortunately. But and I suppose that leads my question is
compared to say the robot butler, who is like a really interesting character,
right? Or the others. It's like I don't think anyone else except for Twilight has done the one or companion segments yet.
Yeah, I actually beat the game, so.
But yeah, so there's a lot of questions to ask here. I suppose in regards to the Metroidvania segments, where did the impetus to implement these come from? Especially since, like the first game kind of had this structure, but not as defined as this one is.
Yeah, totally. So that's a very complicated question, and I kind of have to rewind in my memory. There's actually a lot of reasons for that. One of the things that I try and do, and I'm still testing this out and I'm still exploring it. Like, I'm not sure if this is a valid pursuit or not yet, or if it's just something that I'm getting my bearings on. Is I don't even know how to articulate it exactly, but I try and make experiences that are somewhat appeal to different layers of the human experience. So for example, I've played a lot of games that are really like abstract art house pieces, basically, and I find them to be a little bit too abstract and a little bit too arty, I guess. And it's easy, like my writer and I have a tendency to go in that direction, and it's easy to make psychobabble. So one of the things that I really want is I like violence in games. I think it's fine. I like action gameplay, and I like uh, an enemy that actually poses a threat in the environment. So it's kind of a long way of answering the question, and the reason is because it's kind of difficult to answer. But basically, one of the reasons why it's there is because we spent a long time searching for God, I'm not even sure how to answer, to be honest, at this point. Like you said, it was just a couple weeks ago since we shipped, so I'm still sort of compiling my thoughts about it. Mm-hmm. But basically, the virus, which is the central antagonist, acts as like a central through line of like threat. So we wanted this idea that there was always something that was in the environments or could emerge that could hurt you, and we played with a whole number of ideas for how to do that, and that the idea of this virus was something that already really worked well with our story for various reasons, and that seemed to work well for enemies and all sorts of other stuff like that. Honestly, there's a few reasons. Sorry, that wasn't a very clear answer, I guess, but
no, I get where you're coming from. It's something that's grown so much that you need time to put it into proper context, I think.
Yeah, and also there's another related element, which is like we wanted to have characters to have a single, or players to have a single character that they were grounded in. So there was like a single protagonist. There's actually an earlier version of the Fall Part 2, the initial concept, that was we wanted to expand the world and show players a lot more of the world that seemed appropriate, because the Fall Part 1 is very myopic and it's very focused on this one individual and her very narrow mind. So the first game's about narrow-mindedness. We felt like the second one, it seemed appropriate to open it up a little bit and show more of the world. But it was early editions were a little bit schizophrenic in that they were difficult to follow on just a very simple level. And we decided that it was missing a sort of a really simple, basic, egocentric attachment to a single character, which I think is important. So that gets back to like the idea of wanting the game to appeal on multiple levels. I wanted like a very simple, basic, primitive connection to a single character that could act as a through line through the story. Otherwise, it would just be too goddamn abstract. I mean, tying a plot together with like three characters that were disconnected, forget it. It would just be a complete mess, right?
Possibly. I couldn't say for certain, but that does sound like the kind of thing that you would need an immense level of balance and coordination to pull off correctly.
Yeah. Anyway, point is, if I'm babbling a lot, I mean, the answer is bloody complicated, and I'm not even sure if I have all the answers in front of me right now, honestly.
That's fine. Sometimes you don't have all the answers, especially in the short term.
Mm-hmm.
But speaking of the characters, I suppose we should ask, how did you come up with the trifecta here?
Right. Well, that is a much simpler question, actually. The first game, like I said, deals with Arid's boundaries, her psychological boundaries, and we wanted to open up her world and have her explore, I guess you could say, like the boundaries of the world and of other people. So it's not just about her her rules. It's about the limitations of others and the limitations of the world. And a game about regulation and boundaries and restriction, we felt like that was a natural progression and certainly something that we wanted to go in. But of course, if you're going to do that, the question is, well, what types of boundaries should she encounter? If you're going to tell a story about a person trying to evolve as an individual, what are like the limitations and the hurdles in life that are relevant to you growing? And I guess one of the things that I've been very interested in a long time is that there's an idea in philosophy that you can have, that there's different domains that basically can't be reduced. So one of them is, you could say, like, you have like an objective way of looking at the world. You have focus on other people, and you have focus on internals and emotions and stuff like that. And to some extent, those types of those domains are sort of irreducible to one another. So that was a really interesting idea. So if we are going to expand Arid's world, we wanted to expand it as wide as possible to really get a really interesting sense of I guess openness and room, I suppose, if that makes any sense. Did that make any sense?
Yes, I think so. I would also say not only on those terms, but also the word perspective comes to mind.
Yeah.
It's like I won't like I will just say that perspective is kind of really important in the entire game. It's basically one of the overriding themes, being honest.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah, and I suppose the question that relates to it is, was it difficult putting in all of these markedly different perspectives in this one game?
Yeah, it was very difficult. I mean, when we started playing with these characters and trying to figure out what their perspectives were, then of course, like later on in Act 3, you get this ability to actually like view the world with a different perspective, and that gives you access to different information and different items, and then you have to start cross-wiring these perspectives and bringing information from one into another, and yada yada yada. And what I had to do is I had to come up with a puzzle premise that worked for every combination of those perspectives. So, something that integrated a focus on others with a focus on objective reality, and one that integrated a focus on self with objective reality, and blah, 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 blah. And some of those were just like, oh my God, they went through many, many, many iterations until I found something that I thought was interesting. In particular, the I am train puzzle, where his like identity is diffused into his environment, and you have to help him recenter it. That was that one. I think I went through like 3 iterations that were terrible.
Yeah, I won't lie. I used the guide for that one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's the other.
The one with 7 objects. Yeah. That one I used the guide for.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, that's the other problem with trying to make these wacky puzzles that have got like an interesting premise or a bizarre premise. We always run the risk of people not even getting what the hell we're trying to do, right? So,
yeah, that's kind of like the adventure game maker's trap, isn't it? Can you
yeah,
make it so someone else can understand your logic?
Well, and it's not helped by the fact that the search functionality is a little bit clunky sometimes, since you have to turn on your flashlight and then highlight a thing and then interact with it.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm sorry you found it clunky, dude.
No, it's not like, it's certainly not unplayable, and I still enjoyed it. It's just something I noticed that. I mean, if you want to have the actiony segments, you want to be able to have decent controls for that. It's hard to do that and then have point and click type stuff. So
I get what Galax is saying. It's a little less smooth than saying a traditional, you point, you click, because
yeah, and it's partially because it's a game that's trying to do a bunch of different things, which it does a pretty good job at most of them. So.
Word, yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, but I hear you. It's definitely something that's a challenge. I mean, we had a whole number of complaints for part 1. Oh my God, for the controls. where part one controls are a lot more active. You, instead of pressing a button to raise and lower your flashlight, you simply look with the right stick, and then of course, because both of your thumbs are now occupied with the joysticks, the only way to interact is to hold your index finger over the right bumper. And I found it to be fairly simple, but there was a number of people that just could not get their hands around the controller to perform that many actions at the same time. There was a surprising number of people actually that were just having a nightmarish time. So we changed the controls to be this way simply because you could perform one thing at a time. You press a button, the flashlight comes up. You can let go of the controller at that point if you want to. Then you move the stick and the flashlight aims, and then you can let go of the controller if you want to, and then you press a button to interact. So, that, I guess that's how that evolution came about. But yeah, I mean, if you're making a point and click game, the easiest thing I suppose would be to use the mouse. So it's hard to argue with that.
Indeed, it's just kind of the compromises you have to make in terms of game design, especially a jack of all trades approach, for lack of a better term at this point, or a kitchen sink. There's a name for this.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Anyway, so in terms of size, was the Fall Part 2 always meant to be this expansive, or is that just something that happened during the development process?
It's something that happened during the development process. One of the things that that I learned that was really enlightening in the Fall Part 1 was when I started that project, I really didn't have an explicit idea of what it was going to be. And it kind of was a revelatory process. Like I kind of discovered what I was trying to say while I was making it. And I was really interested in that. I thought that was really funny how that happened, how like basically your brain can come up with an image, let's say, of a character or environment, and encoded in that image is something that's interesting to you, and it's the process of making it that like something really interesting, like basically articulates itself, if that makes any sense. So when we started the Fall Part 2, I was kind of excited to explore that, and I came up with a few ideas that were really interesting, and we basically ran that process, and there's a lot of, it turned into a lot of interesting stuff, but unfortunately we started with too much. Like I came up with like we started with like 4 or so basic ideas, not knowing that each one of those fucking ideas turns into like a multi-headed hydra that each of them needs to be figured out on their own terms. So the game just basically blew up into something that's just so much bigger and so much more complex than I really had any idea of. And the reason is because I don't think I really fully understood the creative process when we started. Like I had an inkling of it, but I didn't. It's an immaturity, I guess you could say. But I'm looking forward to the Fall Part 3. Like it's going to be way more simple and much more manageable for sure.
Well, what specific lessons did you learn on this one that you will apply to the Fall Part 3?
Well, that one is probably the biggest one. I mean, what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to start with a single concept, like a single environment, a single character, and a single simple idea, like maybe even a single image that I'm interested in. And then I'm going to make something around that. And what happens when you try and make a game out of, like, let's say a simple image, is you start working on it, and then you realize there's all these problems, and they'll like kind of unfold themselves and turn into like a full-size game, because that's what happens. The problem with Part 2 is that I started with like 3 or 4 images, and so they each unfolded into these big, just massive, overly complicated behemoths. And then of course we just fought to reel them all in. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Feature creep and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, that is a thing that has been the bane of many of development processes. In fact, there's a friend of ours whose game had to take a pause because of such things.
Oh, is that right? That's too bad. That is sad when that happens.
No doubt. Especially in this case, because crowdfunding. So
Oh, I see.
yeah, I'm like, to say backers aren't happy is an understatement. Like, but that's a discussion for another day.
Yeah. Well, your friend has my sympathies anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, let's see. In terms of actual coding and development, were there any issues on that side of the equation?
Oh, actually, not really. Let me think about that. I'm getting pretty good at using Unity, and I'm not a bad artist, so it's not something I generally have to worry about too much. Unity's a really solid engine, right? So, even bring to the consoles. When we started porting to the Switch, because we were pretty early in terms of developing for the Switch, there was a few, ambiguous crashes. Like, the game would crash, and we wouldn't get any debug information, so we'd just have to, sacrifice a goat and try and divine the bloody bug, just because the development process for the Switch was still so young. But, otherwise, I don't know, man. Game development now is from a technical perspective is easier than it ever has been.
Well, it's good that the message I've been getting about Unity is a lot more positive than it was just a few years ago, because we know a lot of developers who use Unity.
Sure.
And not too long ago, people did not have so many kind things to say about it, especially when it came to consoles.
Oh, really?
People yeah. We had plenty of devs who said that Unity was pretty temperamental, especially if they were developing for the Wii U. Quite a number of complaints about the Wii U, I remember.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, we had a few annoying bugs there too. I don't know, man. I write so many bugs, it's hard for me to hold it against anyone. I think that's part of what's going on for me is yeah, there are bugs, but it's I have no idea. The level of complexity that it takes to write a game engine is not something it's just obscure to me now because of Unity. Like I was saying to somebody else, there's a way in which let's say a 3D model, whatever data that's encoded, whatever format the data is encoded in, that has to be converted to bytes and stored in the physical memory. It's that's type of stuff that it's I don't understand that stuff. I don't have any idea how it works. It's so unfathomably complicated to me, and thankfully I don't even have to think about it. So yeah, it's frustrating when you encounter an engine bug, but God, without Unity I'd be just completely screwed. So
writing your own engine is far worse.
Exactly. Yeah, I wouldn't even know where to begin. Maybe go back to university for a decade. That would be step one.
Possibly.
Or win the lottery and pay somebody else to make it for you.
Yes, I suppose. Although he's going to create bugs, and then you're going to have to get him to fix them. So
that's what the lottery winnings are for.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah.
Now, in terms of developing for the Switch, did you have to make any sacrifices in bringing your game over to it? In terms of resolution or frame rate?
One or two little ones, yeah. Actually, most of the sacrifices we had to make because of all the consoles. So for example, there's a fantastic package on the Unity Asset Store that provides a really nice solution for this rich, soft volumetric lighting that you see in Inside, for example. And the guys that played it obviously really know what they're doing, so they've got this beautiful volumetric lighting system that works everywhere. But that's another example of something that's just beyond my reach. So I can use this volumetric lighting, but yeah, it didn't run at all on the Xbox very well. It didn't even work on the PS4, and getting that running on the Switch was just absolutely forget about it. So that was a feature that just needed to be cut, unfortunately, and that's too damn bad. But other than that, there's a few little differences on the Switch version. There's a couple rooms that don't have let's say a little bit of particles that are kind of ambiently floating in the atmosphere, and a few little things like that. But otherwise, the game looks and plays pretty close on all the platforms.
That's good to hear. Not too surprising, since The Fallout Part 2 doesn't, it doesn't look like the most taxing of games.
Yeah. It's not. It's like it's. I mean, I'm not making Call of Duty, right?
No, or even like say Doom.
Right. Yeah. Sure.
I don't know if you've ever played Doom on the Switch. Like it, it's impressive yet kind of not impressive.
Oh, did they have to cut a whole lot?
They had to cut the frame rate in half.
Oh no! What does it run at? Or runs at 30 at least, right?
Log 30, although sometimes the performance chug there. When you got a lot of enemies on the screen. Although I hear the new patch has done some to remedy that, but not that much. It's just, yeah, Doom isn't a game that I really would ever want to play at 30 frames per second.
Yeah. I hear you, man. That's unfortunate. I mean, quite frankly, I'm surprised that there exists a piece of hardware that can even run Doom in any capacity on the size of the Switch. Like it's.
I'm like, Panic Button did some good work. Anyway, getting back to the Fall Part 2,
Yes.
in terms of like developing all the different versions, did you handle all that yourselves, or did you have outside help?
Oh no, we handled it ourselves. Again, that's another thing that Unity makes a lot easier. And I mean, to some extent, we could have handled it. We could have. I mean, I probably could have hired a distributor and got them to port it. But I guess I'm a bit of a cynic, and I kind of figured, well, probably most of the bugs that they're going to encounter are things that I have to fix because it's like I know the code. I'm going to have to dig into it and offer support anyway, so I might as well just do it. That might be naive. I maybe should have asked for help, but I didn't, so we did it anyway.
Well, I mean, has there been any like major complaints about any of the console versions, for example?
No, actually, we do have a bug that it's occurring on the Switch that isn't occurring anywhere else, which is very bizarre. And it got through lot check, like I didn't find it. And actually, I tried to reproduce it the other day and I couldn't. So I'm kind of like sweating bullets over the next day or two. But I'm sure I'll find it. There's always going to be bugs, but this time around, the build is like pretty stable, and all our platforms are fairly stable.
I mean, it seems like you succeeded in the porting and all that. So
Yeah, I'm pretty happy. Yeah,
like,
could have gone much worse.
oh, no doubt. I mean, I've heard some horror stories.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm like, once again, like, the words Wii U and optimization were heard.
Right.
Anyway, so how's the Fall 2 been doing in the marketplace?
Not bad, actually. Not bad. I wasn't sure. Like, basically, we made the Fall Part 1, and I was not sure, man, if we were going to make a dime. Like, it was a passion project.
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of like, well, we'll do, like, let's say we'll do, like, just enough to keep me sort of surviving. And that'll be fine. And when it kind of took off and started doing okay, I was like, okay, well, this is good. That means that there's a market. So I'm gonna reinvest. I'm gonna sort of double down, and we're gonna just swing for the fences. And that's one of the reasons that the Fall Part 2 is just so much more complex than Part 1. And launch day for Part 2 did not do even close to what I was hoping. It was a bit shocking, actually. It was a really bad day. But I think that maybe my expectations are kind of bad. Like, the market is so saturated right now, as you guys are well aware. And the truth of the matter is I have no idea what to expect. Like, I think we made, I'll just tell you, I think like on launch day in the Fall Part 2, I think we grossed about $10,000 USD. And that, I think it was 12 actually. And the game sells for $16.99. And like the percentage of players that own Part 1, the percentage of them that converted on day one was something like 0.7% or something like that. And that was Steam. That was Steam. So those numbers are much, much, much worse than I was hoping, but they're also not so bad. And it's picked up and it's done okay since then.
Some of the people might have just not noticed it right away because it had been so long.
Exactly. Yeah.
And honestly, the whole obsession the industry has with everything launch day and such has always annoyed me. I'd rather have a game that does well in the long run.
Yeah, thank you. Honestly, that's kind of part of what I'm trying to express. Also, like I'm not. I think maybe that was part of my expectation. Like we're gonna have some launch and that'll be good. But the fall wasn't like that. The fall made $2,000 on launch day, and then it just tanked. Like it was a non-launch, and everything that we got was kind of through word of mouth. So, I mean, I'm hoping that there's probably a lot of people that are fans of the series and are interested to see where part two goes. And they're probably honestly waiting until it's on sale because they know that it'll be on sale because everything's on sale. And so, we'll just try and convert when that happens. And I'm optimistic.
That's good to hear, especially in the climate of today.
Yeah.
The word indie apocalypse is something that's been bandied about quite often, especially in the days of the Steam deluge. There's so many games coming out on the platform. And
hey man, I actually found my metaphor for that. like the apocalypse, the meteor that killed the dinosaurs. You know how there was like that little rat species that sort of survived by living in crevices and feeding off what it could, and it eventually survived and gave birth to humanity. That's like our great ancestor. That's I think the successful strategy for indies right now. It's to not like try and be a dinosaur. It's to be like, you know what? Maybe if I just make a project so that I know that I'm gonna make 10 grand on launch day if I'm lucky, and that's okay because I didn't dump a shitload of money into this game, and we'll just grow it naturally. Like maybe that's what success should look like nowadays.
Perhaps, it's also success is being found on like the Switch right now for a lot of indie devs,
Sure.
Though who knows how long that's going to last.
Yeah, and like, don't get me wrong, there's always going to be people that can put out, and for whatever reason what they make really connects with people and it just blows up, and they're the next, like, video game multimillionaire. But I mean, that's
a lot of that is just pure luck. Like PUBG, nobody was expecting that game to become the monster hit that it did, or Minecraft, or insert game here.
Yeah, sure, exactly. And they're good games. Like, I wouldn't, like, I do agree that there's a component of luck, like, and that isn't to denigrate them or say that it's all luck or something like that. Like, they're still great games, but God, like, yeah, who can predict what's going to connect like that? Like, nobody.
I don't think you can, like, especially from like the indie scene.
Yeah. I mean, look at Five Nights at Freddy's, man. That's crazy.
Like, there are numerous examples of this, and versus like the AAA sector where, they have things like marketing budgets and advertising budgets and all that stuff.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
The indie apparatuses, whatever, like, are much more limited in scope. I mean, they do exist. Like, I certainly get my fair share of PR from various entities talking about Game X or Game Y, and
Sure.
that's certainly good, but it's certainly nothing compared to, multi-million-dollar ad campaigns hitting every form of media imaginable.
Yeah, I mean, you can say that again, man.
Yeah, but we certainly wish that the Fall 2, finds its audience, and hopefully that won't impact the conclusion of the trilogy.
No, I really don't think so. I honestly, like, there's a big well, what do you mean exactly? Before I go on a rant.
Well, it's more, the Fall Part 2 has to sell well enough for the Fall Part 3 to happen.
Right. I think it's gonna happen. I think it's pretty clear that we're gonna make enough money that'll be okay. And honestly, we're at the point now where it's not gonna make little enough money that I have any excuse. And if I want to go back to Kickstarter and say, hey, I want to make my next game now, it'll help me a lot more to say, I actually do what I say I'm going to do. So yeah, I'll be finishing Part 3 for sure. Hopefully a lot sooner this time.
Oh, indeed. Like, And as we are getting low on time here, so I'll wrap up my line of questioning by asking, what can you tell us about The Fall Part 3 at this point?
Ooh, I haven't really thought about the PR related to that. Give me just 5 seconds to think here. Well, it'll definitely focus on Arid, and like I said about part 1, like part 2, I'm the part of what I'm really thinking about is like, is it too complex? It's very sort of like nebulous, and it's sort of about Arid dealing with like a lot of personal stuff. The Fall Part 3, I think, is going to be a lot more simple structurally, and it'll probably deal with bigger ethical issues, I think, but hopefully in a much more simple way. I'm really inspired lately by Pixar. Like, I just saw Coco, and one of the things that I just love about what Pixar does is, man, like, a kid can watch their movies and they just make so much sense to a kid on any level. But all their thematic meaning is just so beautifully layered, and it goes deep. Like, all their movies are really intelligent. There's nothing even remotely stupid or simple about them, but they're organized in this just beautiful, really elegant vertical, like, hierarchical structure, you could say, in terms of meaning. And that's something that I'm aspiring to big time. So hopefully the Fall Part 3 is going to be like really, really just simply viscerally fun and beautifully simple. But anyway, so I think it's probably going to go in that direction.
I hope you still have room for like the kind of character stuff that was in this one, though, because some of the characters in this one were just really hitting the mark, and they were really well acted too.
Yeah, thank you. I'll let Caleb know. Our writer is great, and he does our voice direction and all that kind of stuff as well. So I think he's done wonderful work as well. So I'll tell him you said that. And we definitely will. But I mean, again, that's like people of all ages like just viscerally interesting, weird characters, and I think that it's something that we do well. So we might as well just keep doing it. But we'll definitely continue the thread of like showing you unusual characters and putting you in bizarre situations.
Good to know. Good to know. Well, does anyone else have any other questions to ask at this point?
No,
That was pretty much mine.
Okay.
I'm good.
I think I'm good.
All right.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks, guys.
No problem. Well, John, it was lovely having you on the program after so long, and hopefully it won't be so long in the future.
It won't be. I'll see you next time.
Yeah, So the game is The Fall Part 2 Unbound. It's available on pretty much every major platform. Is it for the computer versions? Is there a Mac and Linux version?
There is indeed. Yep.
Good. So pick it up on your platform of choice for $16.99, and be sure to look for the concluding part of the Fall trilogy, sometime in the future. All right, Petty Fan, play us to the next segment. All right, Kevin, if you're listening, you can come in now.
And guys, I guess I'm going to go back to work, I suppose. I'll leave.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for having me. See you later.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
I'm hearing a lot of traffic. Are you guys hearing a lot of traffic?
I'm kind of.
I think it
Yeah,
was
I hear.
mostly just the usual Kevin joins. There's a bunch of noise for a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just saw it. I apologize for that.
It's okay. Anyway, so audience, this is our political correspondent, Kevin.
Greetings.
Future co-host of whenever we get the Portside Crucible up and running. But he's joining us this week because we are talking about a very political topic outside of the usual realm of video game.
Because did you hear? Video games are responsible for gun violence again.
And it's presidential today.
We got to do this fucking dance again.
Mhm.
Like, believe me, it's not the first time we've ever talked about it on our show. I'm like, either
Yeah, I was just kind of hoping it would stop once Jack fucking Johnson got disbarred.
Thompson.
Thompson. Sorry.
Thompson.
Yeah, I'm like, or when I'm not sure if anyone else remembered this, or when Chairman Yeeman Lee's California bill got struck down by the Supreme Court in 2011 under First Amendment protections. But here we are, the fucking, I don't know, 18th mass shooting since Columbine, or like of high death tolls or whatever.
Oh, no, it's like the 18th this year.
Yeah, it's like whatever it is. It's like, Parkland happened last week. You all know about it. You don't. I envy the rock you're under, sort of.
It's like every time this happens, this will be the last one.
Like,
well, this time.
Yeah, this time.
Honestly, I kind of stopped feeling like it would be the last one after Sandy Hook, because seriously, kindergartners really. But at least this time, like, the people who were actually personally involved are like taking action. So.
Well, it's like I've been saying for a while that this is the kind of thing that needed to happen. It's like nothing was going to fucking change as long as there was no counterforce to the NRA and their fucking lackeys.
Right.
And now we have that in the Never Again movement.
Because this student teenagers don't like worrying about getting shot and killed at their own fucking high school.
Yeah. It's been pretty amazing to watch.
I think that high school needed to be shot up, because high schoolers are probably more capable of doing what the Parkland students are doing, instead of an elementary school, I hate to say, or anything else. I mean, it needed to be more than parents, is what I'm trying to say.
Like, if we go back to Sandy Hook, the reason why that was, kind of the definitive non-statement on gun control is because, the usual cycle was allowed to transpire. Right. And yet the fucking students couldn't speak for themselves because they're grade school kids.
Correct.
With this, we are dealing with, they're still, they are considered children under the law, but, we're talking about 16 and 17-year-olds.
Well, and, like, keep in mind, in many states, if they did something wrong, they could be tried as a fucking adult.
Correct.
You're not wrong. But the point is, they're on the cusp of adulthood in terms of our society. In fact, these are people that are going to be eligible to vote, if not this year, in fucking 2 years.
Yeah, I think one of the classrooms that got shot up, most of the students in that classroom will be eligible to vote this year.
Yeah, and that's gonna hit the political forces like a ton of bricks, because they're sick of this shit. They don't have the fucking paid agenda that your normal politics have, which is why the right-wing nut jobs can't figure these kids out. It's like there's a purity to their message that they can't denigrate.
Yeah.
They're not interested in money. They're not interested in power. They're interested in not being shot the fucking dead.
They're interested in staying alive. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
It's like what they did to Rubio during the town hall thing was a beautiful savagery. Let's be honest.
Oh man.
And these are people who like have the experience to like elucidate, hopefully, that no, it's not because of video games.
Yeah, or it's not the teachers need more guns, which we'll probably get into that in the post show, because oh boy, that technically doesn't fall into this one, but we have things to talk about in the post show, friends.
Right.
Well, it's all connected. I mean, the reason why we're bringing this shit up is because, the old chestnuts are being busted out. But here's the thing, like, they're even more old and creaky than usual because the kids are pretty quick to rebut, like the whole blaming it on violent video games. Guess what? The fucking kids commented on this particular thing. Let me see if I can't find the exact quote here.
In the meantime, I think my personal favorite was the what do you say to accusations that you're a bunch of paid actors? Well, I think that anyone had seen our production of Fiddler on the Roof would say that no one would ever pay me to act.
Yeah, I love that. That was perfect.
God, this might take a bit, but it was basically one of the survivors said he plays first-person shooters. The idea that because you play a first-person shooter, that transferred to wanting to fire a gun is ludicrous.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed.
And the thing about it is that there isn't really any firm evidence. I mean, there have been studies for years because people really want to prove this so badly, so they pay for studies. And unfortunately, the studies don't come up with the conclusion that they want to have.
Or if they do, they're cherry picking results. Like they don't account for abusive homes, children who are bullied,
Mm-hmm.
or anything like that.
Right, because that's usually what causes school shootings. It's kids getting bullied, kids feeling alienated. It's not because of aggression from having your hands on a controller.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah, it's from daddy beating you, not you beating some mythical creature into dust in a video game.
And again, these video games aren't just sold in America. They're sold pretty much these days worldwide.
Yeah, unless I think the only exception is maybe Germany, depending on how violent it is in Australia.
Right. It depends on the individual countries, but for the most part, it's in the vast majority of the world, minus a couple of exceptions.
Yeah.
You don't see them having major gun cultures like this, do you?
Yeah, I'm like, to state the fucking obvious, the reason why we have a gun, a mass shooting problem is because of the fucking guns.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's like
that's what it's all about. It's about deflecting from the topic at hand.
Yeah, and to relate this, I talked about this on Twitter the other day, but the reason why these arguments aren't working, is because these kids are telling the fucking truth. It's the Emperor's new clothes.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll remind you, the one who fucking called the Emperor and said he had no clothes was the fucking kid. Because it was the stone cold truth, and the whole lie unraveled. And that's what's going on here.
Yeah.
Like, they'll know it's the fucking guns, but, the dipshits of the world want to make excuses because, they have a vested interest in making it not the truth.
Right.
Whether it be money or, worship of the gun itself. I mean, for fuck's sakes, the fucking Moonies, and, they took that to the literal end.
As they do.
Yeah, I'm like, thanks for being a bigger self-parody than whatever the Onion could ever come up with. Seriously, if you've seen the pictures, it's the kind of thing that if it showed up in media, you'd laugh at how fucking over the top it was.
Somebody is wearing a literal crown of bullets. That's all you need to know.
Oh, yeah. God.
It's fucking hilarious. I'm like, you just keep doing you, guys. You just keep doing you. Like, there are no jokes that we could make that, you haven't already made yourselves. So
from mass weddings to gun worship, it just makes your mind go insane.
Well, and it's beautifully ironic because the NRA love video games because it's literally you are the good guy with a gun taking out the bad guys with a gun.
You would think.
Yeah.
Well, it's like they need. I don't think the NRA really has a stance. Like, I haven't seen like the NRA themselves.
Well, no, like for a while, like around
stance...
Sandy Hook, but particularly they were like violent video games or the cause in movies and stuff like that.
Yeah, I distinctly remember when Wayne LaPierre had that press conference after Sandy Hook showing off that horrendously dated video game.
Yeah, I think the depth of their stance against video games is exactly as deep as what's something that we can deflect to.
Yeah.
Correct.
At any rate, yeah, it's also th- we are we are a lot. In terms of the culture wars, this actually has been pretty much settled.
Mhm.
It's really only fucking not so much clueless politicians, aside from Trump. He might actually believe this. Um,
Oh no, he's right on the ball about them needing to put in a rating system to keep kids from playing violent video games and seeing violent movies.
And the strange thing about that is that Trump was a part of Hollywood for like a decade because of the whole Apprentice thing. So you'd think he would at least know somewhat about the movie rating system and anything else. I mean, I probably would get why he wouldn't know about the video game rating system, but he would at least know something about the movie rating system. I mean, he was in a movie.
Yeah,
He
you'd think so.
cameo in other
Mhm.
movies.
you
You'd
think a
think he would
lot.
know.
You'd think a lot about Trump,
Right.
but
Plus, I think he accidentally advocated gun seizure today, so
Yeah.
like we are like about a good decade and some change away from the height of people actually fucking believing that video games caused violence or whatever. Hot Coffee was 2004. That was
Yeah.
15 years ago or some such.
Mhm.
It's not the 90s. It's not the it's not the 2000s. It's near the end of the new 10s.
Right.
And outside of video games being used as a cheap political tool, not and for the most part, because we still have to deal with how do I put this, political bullshit.
Yeah.
Like okay, so there's this Rhode Island lawmaker, Representative Robert, probably gonna butcher this, Naro Nardolo Dolilo. Uh, Here, I'll post in the fucking chat. So,
Yeah.
Alex, you have fun with this.
Let me see if I can figure it out.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's like, how do you pronounce this?
it's either Nardolilo or Nardolio.
I'll go with Nardolilo personally.
Yeah.
Robert Nardolilo III. He wants to, he wants to tax violent video games on the basis that it will do something positive, and the funding will go to mental health services and student counseling.
Which I mean is a nice idea, but it's really hard to have that actually happen. And
It's a better
Mhm.
pretense than video games cause violence, but it's still no. This is basically economic censorship.
Yes.
Mhm.
It's like for example, why you just violent video games. And here's the thing: it's a tax on games rated mature, which doesn't necessarily cover violence. Yes, in most cases, but sometimes you get a Dead or Alive in there,
Yeah.
or some of the stuff we play, which would go M and up. Unlike like especially the uncensored versions, but that's not here nor there. The point is, and this is an argument that has always been, of these kinds of things, because this is certainly not the first one.
Oh yeah. This has been happening since at least Columbine.
If not beforehand.
Yeah. Violent
Mhm.
video games are the new violent music.
Yeah, it's like, and it's like, yeah, why don't you have the violent music or the violent movies here or whatever?
Yeah.
And, I'm like, it's just, this is look at me legislation.
Yeah.
Correct.
You know, I'm like, even if it does pass, I don't see it standing. Like, and this is the only law I've heard about this thus far. Like, but
You
anyway,
do wonder if there'll be more.
yeah, you know, if we do hear more on this story, we'll update it, because this is the kind of story that you might hear about and then it'll just fall in through the cracks.
Hmm.
You know, I'm like,
Well,
no-
particularly, taxes on video games, kind of important to us.
right? Especially since
Yeah, I was gonna say there's kind of an argument going on about game pricing that if you might have noticed.
well, yeah, there's the whole loot box controversy,
Mhm.
which that's getting to the political arena, but for vastly different reasons. This
Yeah.
isn't- think of think of the children, but it's because this might be gambling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's less children are actively being murdered and more, children are being preyed upon.
Well, they're being taken of their parents' money.
Mm-hmm.
Because they are children. I'm like, anyway. So, have we gotten all of the anger out of our systems about this yet?
Probably.
Is there any other angles that we need to cover in terms of video game violence and causing mass shootings? Why is it bullshit?
Well, it's like, it's still just ludicrous to me. It's obviously someone who's never, played video games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's usually the case with most of the people who bring the subject up. They probably have never played a video game in their life, or if they have, or their experience with video games is watching their children play it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't find
Yeah.
this ludicrous. I find it cynical, because I find the people who bring this up have a very obvious agenda in bringing it up. They have a very obvious deflection, because they have a very obvious interest in keeping guns available.
Mm-hmm.
Because either
Yeah.
they're part of the money trail, or their fucking hobby has decided to take precedence over everything else in this fucking country.
Correct.
It's like I do not find these people are coming from a honest place.
Nope.
It's like, and that's something I could say about the fucking moral panics of yore, that these people were maybe misguided, that they really did think that this way. I don't think these people think this way. I think that they are just engaging in political manipulation and deflection badly at this point.
Mhm.
Because, the whole violent video games, violent movies, yeah, that's not part of the conversation. Guns are guns are and gun control. We are having the conversation about guns that the NRA never wants to have.
Because they know what happens
Yeah.
next.
Yep.
And it is part of the Constitution that there, to some extent, guns should be allowed in America, but it's been way beyond anything that anyone could possibly have imagined back when that kind of stuff was written. So,
Well, and also these crackpots who think that they're gonna say it to the government when if they ever become tyrannical. It's like, no, you're not. A
you're
predator
not.
drone will see the death of you real quick.
Correct.
Right. So yeah, that'll about do it for this topic. And yeah, I really, really don't want to have to fucking discuss this shit again. I don't think anyone here wants to do that. But I'm not, I'm not that optimistic.
Yeah, we'll probably be either having a good, happy, feelsy, fun time topic about this, or it's gonna be the idiots actually did it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, until next time, yeah, that's about all. That's about it for fucking guns. Like, anyway, and yeah, that'll about do it for this show, for this week. Yeah, so the week ahead, we're we're back to normal. Coming up on Sunday, we have 2 reviews. We've got a game called Insidia. Galax, you might enjoy this one particularly because so it's a free-to-play strategy game, tactical strategy game using nothing but hero units.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I've played about as much as I care to play. That's kind of my big problem with it. There's not a lot of actual content here.
Yeah.
Well, I'll definitely give that a spin later today or tomorrow and let you know what I think. So
Yeah. Don't forget to input your founder code if you haven't.
I already did do that.
And we also got a game called Debris. It's a sci-fi submarine type game. It got released back in late 2017, but it just had an update like yesterday with a co-op mode. So Pettyfan and I are going to be doing a multiplayer session on that game on Friday.
Boy.
If everything works out, because this game actually seems to be fairly high performance. Like, it's giving me, or maybe dodgy optimization. I'm not quite sure yet. Like, all I know is it gives me a lot of load times, a lot of long load times. Like, but yeah, it's a thing we got to do this Friday. Since that's the big mode they're touting right now in all the PR. Anyway, coming up next week, I am pleased to inform that we do have another Tuesday show. And joining us on March 6th is going to be our good friend Phil Elliott of Square Enix Europe, Square Enix Collective. He's got a number of positions, let's say. And, it's going to be an auspicious day because that is actually the launch day of Fear Effect Sedna. Like,
oh, man.
Yeah. Like,
that one game we talked about way back.
If by way back you mean a few months ago. Like, remember we talked.
Yeah.
We talked with Sushi about it in October. So.
Right.
I mean, we've actually talked about Fear Effect Sedna quite a bit. Thinking about it, like, it may hold the record for number of interviews. Granted, we'll be talking to Phil about other games. It's just, this interview is happening on the same day that game is launching. I don't think that's a coincidence because Phil picked this date out. So he probably knew. Can't confirm that, but I wouldn't be surprised at all. Anyway, and on March 7th, speaking of old friends, we'll be having our good friend John Pickett of Manga Gamer. At least I think so. I sent him a message a couple days ago. He hasn't gotten back to me. Probably gonna ping him again on that. Probably tomorrow, if not, just make sure. Like, I want to make sure he's good with our new time because we start at 9:30 now to accommodate Mac. And that could mess with the schedule of some of our people who have been on the show more than once. But anyway, we should be talking about a game called A Kiss for the Petals, Maidens of Michael. It's a visual novel that came out just a few days ago. We'll see what happens with that. And yeah, that's what's coming up next week. And until Friday, actually, I wish you good gaming.
All right, I have the post-show thing up.